All is silent, all is black, apart from the beams of light making their way through the cracks in the ceiling and rubble that collapsed on the subway entrance. Thick dust from debris of the collapsed building can be seen passing through the beams of light. Then amongst the silence, Claudia, the female gunroom, who fled down the subway with the group, begins to cough. Eric, coughing himself, calls out to everyone, "Is everyone okay?" Tara replies, "Yeah, I think so." "Claudia? Matt?" Matthew speaks. "Oh, damn, yeah. Ow." Claudia calls out, "Steve, Steve." Michael then speaks. "Shoot, that was close." Claudia calls out again, "Steve, where are you?" An explosion from above the tunnel rumbles and shakes the subway. "Matthew, torch, where is it?" Tara says hastily. Matthew taps the torch and it comes on, illuminating his face. He points it in Tara's face, causing her to strain her eyes at the beam of light. Then she says, "Hey fool, lower it, will ya?" Matthew then begins to shine the light around, searching for the others, and speaks. "Everyone okay?" Claudia calls out in desperation again, "Steve! Where's Steve? Where's Steve?" Matthew turns the torch, scanning the now blocked subway entrance they leapt down, and says, "Shoot!" Amongst the twisted metal and rubble, a blood-covered arm can be seen protruding from it. Claudia screams, "No! No, Stephen!" Claudia runs to the rubble and tries to begin moving it. "Come on, help me," she says. Matthew puts down the torch and him and Tara run towards her and try and help her out, followed by Eric and Michael. It's useless. There is too much and it's too heavy. Another explosion can be heard coming from above, shaking the subway. Tara stops and checks Stephen's pulse on his protruding arm, as Claudia and Matthew continue to struggle to move the massive chunks of rubble. Tara shakes her head and looks up at Matthew. Claudia, defiant, continues to try and remove the rubble. Tara stands up and puts her hand on the struggling Claudia's shoulder, then speaks to her softly. "Claudia, Claudia." Matthew stands the other side of Claudia, placing his hands on her other shoulder, who is still refusing to give up moving the rubble, and softly says, "Come on, he's gone." Claudia stops and leans on the rubble with her hands and arms outstretched on it, panting, looking to the ground. She turns her head and looks at Stephen's arm, then falls to her knees and begins to cry, holding her hands over her face. "No, no," she cries. Eric and Michael are watching. Then Michael becomes uneasy on his feet and stumbles until he is leaning against the wall. Eric turns his head to Michael and frowns and calls out to him, "Are you okay?" Michael grips onto his head with one hand, his other supporting his body weight against the wall. Then a ringing screams through his ears, and his vision begins to warp and double. He then falls to his knees and screws his face up in pain, and grabs his head with both hands and screams, "Ah!" Eric then runs over to Michael and kneels next to him, grabbing him by the shoulders, as Michael then falls forward, holding himself up with both arms outstretched in front of him. Michael's eyes open wide and he stares ahead down a subway tunnel. Eric looks down the tunnel himself, but then back, as he sees nothing there amongst the darkness. He looks back at Michael and says, "Michael, what's wrong?" Michael's eyes don't blink as he stares down a subway tunnel, his ears still ringing and his vision warping and spinning. Then in the distance, a glowing vision of Hoto emerges as he used to look in the Crystal Realm when Michael was younger. Hoto?" Michael utters. The ringing in Michael's ear stops and Hoto's voice echoes in his mind. "Michael, the desert. Go home. Sam awaits. Come free me." Then the image of Hoto disappears. Matthew, who is now holding the torch again, speaks warmly to Tara and Claudia as another explosion rocks the subway, causing small bits of debris to fall from the ceiling. Tara and Claudia are still on their knees as Tara is hugging the sobbing Claudia. "Come on, let's go." Tara stands up and places her hand on the still kneeling Claudia as she cries and holds on to Stephen's hand. Matthew then picks up Stephen's assault rifle, then kaboom! A louder explosion coming from the streets above shakes the subway, causing parts of the ceiling to topple. Eric helps Michael to his feet as everyone looks on anxiously at the ceiling. Matthew shouts, Damn it, come on!" The group begin to run down the subway tunnel as Matthew leads the way with the torch. The group run and run down a litter and debris-strewn subway tunnel as the explosions grow quieter and less frequent. The sunlight can no longer be seen between the cracks and holes in the tunnel ceiling. Tara yells out, "Stop!" The group stop as Tara leans over with her hands on her knees, catching her breath. She then speaks, "The explosions, they've stopped." Everyone looks to the tunnel ceiling and listens for signs of explosions. They listen for a moment, then Eric speaks. Yeah, you're right. I haven't heard one for a while. Matthew shines his torch on the ceiling, then it flicks off, then says, Damn it, the batteries! Matthew whacks the torch with his hand, but it fails to work. Then Tara speaks. Shoot, we're going to have to be more careful as we go. The group slowly advance down the dark and cluttered subway tunnel, climbing and stepping over obstacles and debris as they come to him. Claudia walks into something and calls out, What's that? She kicks the object softly with her foot. Matthew, check to see if the torch is working, she says. Matthew checks the torch again and replies, Nope, no good. Tara walks carefully over to Claudia and gently kicks out at the object too. She then reaches in her chest pocket and pulls out a lighter and sparks it a light illuminating her and Claudia's face. She lowers the lighter to the ground to see the object. Claudia puts her hand in front of her mouth and Tara winces and turns her face away as the light reveals a body with a huge bloody hole in her torso. Tara looks back and winces again. Ugh, she says, as Michael looks over the body and speaks. What the frick? What the hell could have made such a clean hole like that? He's wearing gunroom colours. Check the face. Who is it? Tara moves the lighter in the direction of the body's face. Claudia gasps. As Tara speaks, shaking her head. Damn, Ashley. It's goddamn Ashley. The group are looking down at the body of Ashley when a noise is heard coming up from the tunnel. Tara drops the lighter, and she and Claudia instantly point their guns in the direction of the noise. Matthew gives Eric Stephen's gun and picks up Ashley's and passes it to Michael. The whole team point their weapons down the subway. A noise comes from ahead of them again. Tara cocks her shotgun, Claudia's finger trembling over the trigger of her gun as she aims at the unseen target. Tara shouts out, Who's there? Matthew then shouts, Identify yourself or we'll fire. Then another noise comes from the tunnel in front of him. Screams something, followed by something being hit with a great force. Crash, crash, bang! Eric speaks under his breath. What the? Michael yells, What is it? Matthew begins the countdown. 5, 4, 3. Then more noises come from the same direction. A low rumble with some clicking and whirring noises. Then a voice yells, No, stop! Then a further strange whirring noises. Claudia then shouts, Huh? Wait! A light shines from the floor from the area in which the noise was coming from, the beam of the torchlight pointing straight up. A hand covered in blood can be seen to raise from the ground. The voice pleads again. Please, don't shoot. Don't shoot. We are unarmed. Then a figure walks into the beam of light, making itself partially illuminated. The figure is about 10 feet tall, and the torchlight shimmers off his singular star-decorated belt buckle. Tara and Claudia lower their weapons and look surprised. The giant lets out a gentle growling-like noise. Tara speaks. Twinkle! Oh my god! The others lower their weapons as Tara runs over to Twinkle and the person on the floor. The voice of the person on the floor speaks again. Tara, is that you? Tara kneels down to the person and says, Jackson, is that you? Matthew and Claudia walk over to Tara and Jackson. Michael stands next to Eric as he looks at the giant Twinkle. Jackson is bleeding from his abdominal area. He speaks coughing up blood as he does so. Tara, we were ambushed. Tara gently holds up Jackson's head and asks him, Who done this? Jackson struggles to reply. Snake gang. There are snakes down here. Oh. As Jackson groans in pain, Twinkle pines like a puppy and kneels down and leans over Jackson. Jackson speaks again. As soon as the sirens came on, I saw Twinkle run down the subway. I told Ashley and he wanted to make sure Twinkle was okay. We were down there looking for him, then bang! We were attacked. I led still. I think they thought I was dead. I heard them walk past, then I must have passed out. The next thing I remember is Twinkle above me, stroking my head. Twinkle makes a high-pitched groan, then places his huge hand on Jackson's abdomen, covering his wound. Then a faint explosion can be heard, and Twinkle looks up and growls. A rumbling can be heard going over the streets above. Everyone looks up, and Twinkle growls more fierce as he looks up. Matthew then speaks. Damn, the army must be in the city by now. Claudia stands up and says, We gotta move, Tara. Tara looks down at Jackson holding his hand and asks him, Jackson, are you able to move? Jackson laughs and then begins to cough as he replies, I can't feel my legs, Tara. I don't think I have long. Tara looks at Twinkle, and Twinkle whines and gently takes hold of Jackson's head. Tara then says to Twinkle, I guess you're staying here then, big guy. Twinkle makes clicking noises and then nods his head to say yes. Tara raises to her feet and looks at the others. Jackson then speaks. Tara, be careful. I passed out. Before I passed out, I watched the snakes pushing this large object. One of them said it was a gun. Tara replies in shock. A gun? Jackson then speaks again. Here, Tara, take my torch. I have no use for it now. Tara kneels down and picks up the torch and says to Jackson, We gotta go, Jackson. Jackson replies, Get out of here. Get out of here alive, Tara, you hear me? Now go. Matthew kneels down to Jackson and holds his hand. Then Claudia kneels down and kisses his forehead and stands up and kisses Twinkle's forehead. Matthew pats Twinkle on the back as they all begin to set off down the tunnel. They walk for an hour or so and come to a junction in the tunnels and stick to the right tunnel. After another hour or so, they see light coming from ahead. Tara signals everyone to be quiet and turns off the torch. Then they slowly advance down the tunnel towards the light. They creep meandering behind fallen debris and rubble as they come to a large ceiling area. The wall ahead of them is illuminated by burning torches on the wall. In between the torches, a large iron door is shut. This area is a junction of tunnels, but to the group's left it is unpassable as the ceiling has collapsed, but to their right is a clear exit along the subway. The whole area is strewn with rubble and a few battered train carriages to the left of the area that are half submerged in the darkness. Matthew gives a wait signal to the group as they emerge from the tunnel into the high-ceilinged area. He cautiously makes his way towards the door. As he gets there, he puts his head against the door to listen inside. Then, from one of the train carriages to the left, 4 mutated dogs run out barking and snarling towards Matthew. Tara, quick to notice, starts shooting and hits one of the dogs that crashes to the ground yelping. The other dogs, however, attack Matthew. Tara and Claudia fire short bursts at the dogs to try and not hit Matthew, as they have a hold of his leg and arm as he is rolling on the floor, fighting them off. Eric then starts to shoot as Michael is too nervous in case he hits Matthew. Tara hits one of the other dogs and it lets out a yelp and falls to the ground. The iron door opens and then more dogs leap out and run towards the group. The dogs attacking Matthew stop attacking him and also run towards Tara and the others. Michael now begins to shoot as the dogs run at them, as dogs all yelp in pain as they get shot. Matthew, injured on the floor, then gets dragged into the room through the iron door as 4 Snake Gang soldiers burst out, their guns blazing. The group all dive behind piles of rubble in the tunnel. The last remaining dog leaps over the rubble and turns to attack Claudia. Michael scrambles with his gun and shoots it as it leaps at her. It then crashes into Claudia and slumps on her dead. She then pushes it off away from her. Tara is hid behind a fallen concrete pillar to the left of the tunnel. Claudia is a bit behind to the right of Tara, hid behind a pile of rubble. Michael and Eric are a bit further back themselves, hid behind a long pile of rubble and debris. The snakes stop shooting but point their guns towards the group's hiding positions. Tara frowns and looks back to Michael and Eric and can't see them as it is too dark and the rubble is blocking them from her view. She shouts out to Claudia quietly, "Shoot! Claudia! Claudia!" Claudia replies equally as quietly, "Yeah?" Then Tara says hastily but still quietly, "Where's Michael and Eric?" Eric then replies quietly, "We're okay, we're back here." Tara then says, "Did anyone see how many there are?" Claudia replies, "4, I think." Tara calls to Eric, "Eric?" Eric replies, "What?" Tara then says, "Did you see how many there were?" Eric replies, "No, I'm sorry, I didn't." Tara pauses for a moment, realising they are well hidden in the darkness, giving them an advantage, as the side of the room the snakes are in is lit by torches. The 4 snakes are approaching the group, hiding positions, but can't see amongst the darkness. She says to the group, "Right, on the count of 3, look for targets and shoot. 1, 2, 3. The group look over the rubble they are hiding behind and begin to fire at the approaching snake gang. Tara hits one of them and he falls to the ground as the remaining three dart behind some rubble themselves. The snakes return fire and a gun battle ensues, each group returning fire from their covered positions. Michael calls out to Eric, "I've run out of ammo." Eric replies, "Then stay down." And with that, Eric looks up and shoots one of the snakes. The other two bolt back for the door, but Tara and Claudia open fire and shoot them down. Tara spits and says, "Scum." Claudia peers over the rubble and calls to Tara, "Quick, they're guns." Tara runs to Michael and gives him her gun and says, "You two cover us." Tara and Claudia jump over the rubble and run to the snakes' bodies and collect their guns. As they run back to Michael and Eric, the iron door swings open again. Tara and Claudia rush back to dive behind the rubble they were hid behind as 6 more snake gang soldiers pour out of the doorway opening fire, and one throws a flare towards the group that lands in front of the rubble they are hiding behind. Michael and Eric return fire, giving Tara and Claudia cover as they get safely behind their positions. Eric shoots one of the snakes and he falls to the floor. Eric then calls out to Tara, "Tara, throw me a gun, I'm out of ammo." Claudia rejoins the gun battle and gives Tara cover fire as she throws a gun to Eric. Tara then joins in the gun battle herself. The group take random shots at the snakes from behind their rebel defences, and the snakes are doing the same, although they are not as well hidden behind their cover themselves. Tara calls out, "Claudia, how many?" Claudia replies whilst clutching her gun and crouching as bullets ricochet above her head, "5? 6? I'm not sure." Tara returns fire at the snakes shooting at Claudia, and Claudia then peers around a pile of rubble she is hid behind and begins to spot and count the snakes gang's positions. As she counts them, the iron door opens again and a huge multi-barreled gun emerges, being pushed by a snake with a red cloak and helmet fashioned in the shape of a dragon's head. Below his cloak he is covered in a fair amount of bulletproof clothing. The gun is from one of the government vehicles the snake gang attacked and is mounted on a metal platform with wheels. The platform is carrying the weapon's ammunition and power cell, which has been ripped out of the vehicle and is protected by iron shielding, and tied to the top of the large gun's barrel is Matthew, who is barely conscious. The snake gang leader, who is now positioned behind the gun, begins to laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha!" He then turns on the gun, making one of the lower barrels spin. Claudia ducks back into cover and shouts out, "Everyone, get down!" The group cower behind cover as a large gun sprays bursts of bullets in their direction. The bullets tear chunks into the rubble piles and the group's hiding behind. The snake leader then focuses fire on the pillar Tara is hid behind. Claudia leaps up and fires a single shot at the opposite leader, and it ricochets off his helmet. With a rage he screams and aims his gun on Claudia's position. "Ah!" The other 5 snakes join him and they all pepper Claudia's position with bullets. The bullets from the large gun are tearing the rubble that Claudia is hiding behind to pieces. Tara watches on as Claudia cowers and hides behind a disintegrating pile of rubble, bullets ricocheting around her. Tara grits her teeth and leaps up and fires 2 bursts of bullets, taking down 2 of the snakes. They scream as they get hit, falling to the floor. "Ah!" Tara ducks back down into cover as the snake gang leader shouts and screams as he turns his gun to Tara's position. "You little... ah!" he screams. He then fires 2 small rockets from the gun's lower-sided barrels. One flies down the subway exploding, but the other one explodes above near where Tara is hiding. A large section of wall and many smaller parts break away and fall towards Tara. As she looks up, Michael shouts, "No!" and the debris collapses on Tara as she screams, "Ah!" Crash! A large section of wall is supported by the pillar Tara was behind, and she is either trapped or crushed beneath it. As smaller parts of the wall have completely entombed her. Michael fires rapidly, but his gun clicks as he runs out of ammo. The snake gang leader turns his gun to Michael. Michael and Eric duck down as the rubble they are hiding behind begins to fly as gun bullets tear into it. Eric says to Michael, "I'm all out of bullets." Michael, lying down as to try and take cover, replies, "Me too, damn it, now what?" Claudia leaps up and fires the last bullet at the opposite leader, and it hits his helmet again, making him stagger back. He gains his footing and begins to turn the gun to Claudia's direction and begins to scream out, "Ah, you little bitch!" But his scream is interrupted by a louder noise coming from back down the tunnel behind Michael, Eric and Claudia. One of the snake gang soldiers lowers his gun and looks down the direction of the tunnel. Stunk! Suddenly, a chunk of concrete smacks the snake gang soldier in the face, and the force of the impact is so strong that it lifts him off his feet and sends him flying backwards as he crashes to the ground, with blood gushing from his smashed skull. All the remaining snake gang soldiers lower their weapons and look to their colleague who has just crashed to the ground. One says, "What the f-" Then suddenly, A long pole flies from the tunnel and hits the speaking Snake Gang soldier in the chest and sends him flying and impels him to the wall. The Snake Gang leader screams and begins to shoot his large gun down the tunnel. Ah! The remaining Snake Gang soldier backs against the wall, firing as well as he does. At lightning speed, a train wheel flies from the tunnel, hits the Snake Gang soldier in the neck and embeds in the wall. The Snake Gang soldier's head sits on top of the embedded wheel and his body slumps to the floor. The Snake Gang leader looks around at his dead soldiers and screams again and starts to shoot the large gun down the tunnel again. Ah! Michael, Eric and Claudia remain hidden behind their piles of rubble, unaware of the fate of the Snake Gang soldiers, but aware of the noise coming from behind them. Then the group turn to face down the tunnel as they can hear the sound of bullets ricocheting off of metal and nearing them. A mighty roar comes from the tunnel. Then, from out the darkness, Twinkle leaps over Michael and the group, holding a large solid iron door in both hands and is using it as a shield, and runs towards the snake leader. The snake leader screams in fear, "Ah!" and fires more bullets, but they repel off the iron door Twinkle is holding. Twinkle then swings the door, knocking the gun away. Matthew flies off the top of the gun as it topples and slides across the floor. Then the Snake Gang leader stumbles back and reaches for his machine gun on his side. Twinkle raises the iron door, then crash! He slams it down, crushing the Snake Gang leader. Twinkle lets go of the door and stretches his arms out and roars as if in victory. Michael and Eric peer over the rubble pile they are hid behind. Claudia runs over to the rubble Tara is buried under. She kneels down and shakes her head. Damn it, no, no, no! Michael runs over to the rubble and tries to remove a large slab of fallen concrete. Eric rushes over and tries to help him. Twinkle turns around and walks to the struggling gang. He gently pushes them aside and steps in. Twinkle faces down at Claudia, who then looks up at him. Twinkle then points at and faces the direction of Matthew, who is led down on the ground. Claudia looks over and then looks back up at Twinkle and then begins to run over to Matthew, shouting, "Matthew! Matthew!" Claudia gets to Matthew and kneels down and rolls him from his side onto his back. Matthew murmurs, "Oh God! Ouch! What the hell happened?" Claudia bursts into tears saying, "Thank God you're okay." Matthew replies, opening his eyes and looking disorientated, "Damn, my head! My ears are ringing." Meanwhile, Twinkle is gripping hold of the large piece of rubble Tara is under and begins to lift it, as Michael and Eric watch on. Twinkle lifts it up and throws it clear of everyone. Crash! Tara is covered in dust, with a cut on her head, and unconscious. Michael rushes over to Tara and tries to wake her up by gently shaking her. "Tara! Tara, wake up!" Twinkle, despite having no visible eyes and a band of metal around his head covering them, he looks up and down Tara's body as if scanning it. He points to her ankle and tries to communicate with Michael, making a strange clicking and groaning noise. Michael replies, "I'm sorry, Twinkle, I don't understand." Twinkle shuffles a little closer to Tara and places his hand on her head. He then clenches his other hand and puts it in a fist and places it on his chest. He then looks at the floor, clenching his jaw. Tara then begins to cough. Huh? Tara wakes up and Twinkle begins to stroke her head. She says, "Michael! Twinkle!" Tara starts to sit up and then screams out in pain. "Ah!" Mike grabs hold of her by the shoulders and says, "What's wrong? What is it?" Tara replies through gritted teeth, "My ankle, I think it's bust. Ah!" Tara holds onto her ankle and screws her face in pain. Twinkle makes some strange clicking noises and looks to Tara's ankle. Twinkle then places his huge 4-digit hands over Tara's hands and ankle, then begins to frown. Tara's facial expression turns from one of pain to a frown and to a look of puzzlement. She exclaims, "The pain! The pain, it's stopping!" Tara then looks at Michael and they both look at Twinkle as he lets go of Tara's ankle and begins to lift her up. Twinkle raises to his feet with Tara in his arms and looks around. Twinkle then turns around and carries Tara towards the iron door where the snake gang emerged from. Michael rises to his feet and looks at Eric in amazement and says, "Did you see that?" Eric replies, stroking his beard, "There is more than meets the eye about this giant." Eric shakes his head and walks over to Michael and puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Come on, let's get some rest." Eric passes Michael a gun he picked up and walks to the door. Twinkle enters carrying Tara. Matthew and Claudia also making their way to the door. Matthew supported with his arm around Claudia. Behind the door is a large room illuminated by petrol lamps hanging off the walls. In the room are several strange-looking guns. There are also some belongings, food and blankets the snake gang had brought. Tara is still in Twinkle's arms, leaning against his huge chest. As the others enter the room, she says to everyone, "Will you look at this?" The group look around the room and Eric speaks. They are government army weapons. The snakes must have brought them. Matthew shuffles over to one of the guns, rubbing his head. He picks one of the army guns up and sits down and leans back against the wall and says, "Jesus, look at them. Some high tech here." Claudia picks up a blanket and sits next to Matthew. Michael picks up one of the guns and walks off to a corner of the room and he sits down. Twinkle puts Tara down. She looks at her ankle, then looks up at Twinkle and shakes her head with a smile. She picks up a blanket and sits down and says, "It must be dark by now, and I'm beat. I suggest we get some rest for a few hours to regain some strength." Matthew replies, "I second that. My head is killing me." Twinkle walks out of the room and tears a huge gun the snake gang leader was using off the platform and slings the cables attaching it to the ammunition and power cell over his shoulder. Then he re-enters the room. Everyone is led down or leaning against the walls as they all begin to rest and sleep. Twinkle places the gun on the ground in front of him and then sits cross-legged on the floor with his hands on his knees.